Imagine if this was on the other side, what the press would be saying about the funding if just one of the Koch brothers would have written a check for $100,000. Imagine what the media would be saying. We want to stick to the facts, fix reason firmly in her seat, and question with boldness even the very existence of God. For if there be a God, he must surely rather honest questions over blindfolded fear. That was Thomas Jefferson, and that is the spirit of the Enlightenment. That was the spirit of America, but we have lost that. Now everybody's just trying to win. Well, let's stop trying to win, and let's actually start to figure out what is happening. There's something deep inside of our children that has changed. ARs have been available since Vietnam. Kids weren't shooting each other. What's happened to us? And let's get the facts on guns and the actual facts on what the proposals actually mean. Will they help our children be safer? We go to Jon Lott. He has written an article. He's also a co-author of my book, Control. He is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and probably the best mind on the stats around guns and gun control. Welcome to the program, Jon. How are you?
Doing okay, Glenn. Good to talk to you again.
So, Jon, let me just go through your article piece by piece because facts are important. The new hot number from the gun control advocates is that there have been 18 school shootings so far this year. Can you tell me about the 18 that have happened since the beginning of the year?
Right. Well, I mean, it includes gunshots fired on campus as well as those off of campus. It includes things like a police officer who accidentally discharged his gun and nobody was harmed. It includes suicide that may have occurred by an adult in the car parking lot that had nothing to do with the school. Somebody just driving by, pulling into the parking lot and killing themselves. It includes a case where a pellet gun broke a window in a school bus that was parked not even on an actual school property, but in a parking lot for buses. You know, nobody was inside the bus at the time when the pellet gun broke the window. You know, things that range from annoying to minor cases to things that don't have anything to do with guns on campus. And you have two of them that are kind of what would be these mass public shootings that get everybody's attention, where you had people killed and multiple people harmed. One was in Kentucky, and the other one was obviously in Florida.
So what everybody is saying they're looking for is an end to these, and they're making all kinds of proposals. So let's take them one by one. First, more background checks.
Right. Before we get through the whole list, I just want to say something. That is, I'm incredibly frustrated by this debate. I've been involved in this debate for 20 years. I had a piece in the Wall Street Journal back in 1998, in March 98, calling for getting rid of gun-free zones at schools, pointing out that we hadn't really had any of these attacks at schools until after 1995, when the so-called Gun-Free School Zone Act was passed federally. And I want to do something. I don't want these things to ever occur again, but I want something that actually matters. The types of rules that you are asking me to go through right now, the one thing that they share in common is that they wouldn't have stopped these attacks. And yet they're the ones that people keep on pushing for even before we know what the facts were for a case.
Right. I mean, we look at what happened with the sheriff and all of the things that should have been done, could have been done, would have been done in other places. We had multiple opportunities to stop this shooter, even while he was shooting, and we didn't do them.
Right. Well, I mean, it's cowardice and other things. You can have training. It's not clear that the sheriff's deputies had proper training in these cases. But even beyond that, I want to replace these signs that we have at schools that say these schools are a gun-free zone with signs that you can see in places from Texas to Oklahoma to Ohio and other places that say, warning, selective staff or teachers at these schools have weapons to be able to go and defend themselves and others. We have 25 states in the United States that, to varying degrees now, allow people to be able to carry permanent concealed handguns on the school grounds, staff or teachers. Some are much more liberal in terms of allowing it than others. But in all those places that allow it, there's not one example of a school shooting occurring. There's no, the fears that people have. If you listen to the discussion last week from people like Senator Rubio to the listening session that President Trump had, where people were saying, well, teachers are emotional, was one of the arguments that were brought up against Trump. Well, you don't see any problems that occur. I know of one accidental discharge that occurred outside of school hours, and that's it. And that's over years, decades. And so the discussion is often, well, let's put a police officer in a place. The problem is putting somebody in uniform it may make you feel good, but it's an impossible job. Anybody who's read any of my books know that I think police are extremely important in stopping crime. I think police are the single most important factor. But if you put an officer in uniform to try to guard against these types of attacks, it's an impossible job. Putting somebody in uniform is like putting somebody there who has a neon sign above them that says, shoot me first. Because if he's the only person that has a weapon, these killers know that if they kill the police officer first, then they have nothing more to worry about. Then they're going to be free for some period of time until others are able to arrive on the scene to go and kill people.
So, John,
they take them out first.
This is something that we clearly know as a society. It's why we protect the identity of air marshals. It's why we don't put an armed police officer in uniform on airplanes. We let them mix in so the bad guy never knows who the good guy is. We don't want a shootout. Well, you certainly don't have a problem with a shootout in an airplane. And by the way, pilots, are they emotional? Because all the pilots had to be trained to use a weapon just in case the air marshal goes down. We didn't have a problem with that either. This is a bogus debate. Let me go through before we run out of time. Let me go through the things, for instance, more background checks. Tell me about why that won't work.
Well, the one go-to law that from Obama through now and other times has been these background checks on private transfers. The deal is, there's not only wouldn't it have been relevant for this attack in Florida, and people were calling for this like in an hour and a half after the attack, even before they knew how the killer had gotten his gun. There's not one mass public shooting this century or years before that would have been stopped if this law had been in effect. There's simply no cases where people have gotten the gun in this way that would have been stopped by the background check, even if it had been effective.
Well, let me just
one of these silly things that they push for, and my own belief is the reason why they push for it is they just want to make it costly for law-abiding citizens to get guns. They know they've been asked a couple times by the media to identify one case where this has mattered, and the response that you get from them is, well, we still need to try to do something. Maybe it might stop something in the future. And they can't point to one case in the past where it would have helped.
How about the new assault weapon ban? Let's just ban these assault weapons, John. Nobody needs an assault weapon. Would this have helped?
No, it wouldn't have. First of all, I'm not even sure. I hope the people are just ignorant and don't know what the guns are and how they operate. But the AR-15s are a semi-automatic rifle, small caliber semi-automatic rifle. They fire the same bullets with the same rapidity, doing the same damage as a small caliber hunting rifle. If you want to go and ban all semi-automatic guns, fine, let's talk about that. But to go and buy, I don't think it makes sense, and I can talk about it, but to try to go and ban some guns based on how they look just simply doesn't make any sense.
Correct. Well, but you wouldn't have to ban the semi-automatic handguns, because a semi-automatic handgun, I learned from NBC News, it just doesn't travel as fast as a rifle. And so a rifle will just kill the person with a handgun much quicker.
Well, if you look over the last decade, about 68% of the mass public shootings have involved solely handguns. If you include handguns used in part of the attack, handguns with rifles, handguns with shotguns, it makes up about 84% of the attacks involve handguns in some way. And so all they're going to do is they'll ban maybe they could ban all rifles, and then they'll come back and they'll say, well, we need to ban all handguns. What people need to talk about are the costs and benefits of guns. So when they go and they say, let's ban guns for people under age 21, well, it's horrible that this 19-year-old killed people, and we should do things to try to stop it, things that we know will work. But the thing is, lots of law-abiding 20-year-olds use guns to protect themselves and their families. And the problem that you ultimately face is that if you were going to say ban guns from a particular area or ban guns for particular people, it's the law-abiding good citizens who obey those rules and not the criminals. It's the reason why we've been having these attacks after we've created these gun-free zones.
Jon Lott from the Crime Prevention Research Center. His latest book is The War on Guns, Arming Yourself Against Gun Control Lies. He is the best on the stats. You need to have that book in your library. Thanks, John.